Hey everybody. So every few months on Facebook or Instagram, I often see posts about involving number tricks where you start with a number, you do a whole bunch of operations with it, and there's some result at the end that always happens. You may wonder how these are created or how they work. In this video, I'm going to show you how to create your own number tricks. So number trick number one, ending with a number that satisfies some given rule. The example that I want to show, or the rule that it needs to have, is that the number at the end will always be a multiple of 10. In order to start this number trick, I tend to just kind of start with what I want at the end and then I work backwards and then I work forwards again. So what I'm going to start with is 10x. This needs to be my ending value. If something needs to end with a multiple of 10, then regardless of what the input is, that's going to be my variable. It needs to be 10 times that amount. This is going to guarantee that at the end, we're ending with something that is a multiple of 10. Where you start and kind of how you get back to the start is totally up to you. And this is kind of the fun part of making up your number trick. So here's an example that I'd want to do. Well, maybe in the last step, I want to go from 10x, and then previous to that, I want to go 10x plus 5. Well, what that means is that to go from the start and going back a previous step, I'd have to add 5 because 10x plus 5 is 10x plus 5. Next, I could then maybe go to 20x plus 10. Well, how do I go from 10x plus 5 to 20x plus 10? Well, that I have to multiply by 2. Let's go then from 20x plus 10 to 4x plus 2. Well, how did I get from 20x plus 10 to 4x plus 2? Well, there I just divided by 5. Then what I'm really trying to do is at the start, I need to start with x. So then I would, let's say I take away 2, so then I get to 4x. So from here to here, I subtracted 2. And then to get just x, I start by then dividing by 4. So what I'm doing here is at the very end, I will have a result of 10x. This is where I'm starting. And remember that x is just some number. X is some number. In this case, we'd probably want to be a little bit more specific. I'd want to say that x is some integer, just so that when I take that integer and I multiply it by 10, I get a multiple of 10. So we're going to say that x is some integer. And this is us working backwards. We're ending at 10x. We had started with x. And these were the steps of how I worked backwards. If I needed to go forwards, well, from x to 4x, I times by 4. From 4x to 4x plus 2, I'm adding by 2. So notice all I'm really doing is that in the previous step, I had divided by 4. When I go backwards, I go multiply by 4. Instead of subtracting 2, I'm now adding 2. So it's really just the opposite operation. So instead of dividing by 5, I would multiply by 5. Instead of timesing by 2, I'm dividing by 2. Instead of adding 5, I'm subtracting 5. Here is my number trick. What this allows us to do is to start with any number, and the result will be 10 times that number. It's probably a good thing to make sure that we can actually get this thing to work. So let's start with 1. First thing we're going to do is multiply by 4. So we'll have 4. Next, we're going to add 2. So we get 6. Next, we'll multiply by 5. So we get 30. Next, we divide by 2. We get 15. And finally, we subtract by 5 and we get 10. And yeah, my answer is a multiple of 10. Let's try some other maybe like weirder number. Let's start with 7. Okay, well, 7 times 4 is 28. Plus 2 is 30. Times by 5 is 150. Divided by 2 is 75. And when I subtract by 5, I get 70. Perfect. My answer is a multiple of 10. Here, this is my inductive reasoning, or this is a form of inductive reasoning. I'm just choosing a specific number and finding that it works. This is my deductive reasoning. So here's an example of kind of where we're starting with the deductive and going back to inductive to make sure that it works. Let's try a different number trick. Number trick number 2, ending with the same number you started with. So for this one, again, let's start with the ending value. That's going to be x. This is what we want to end with. What we want to start with is the same number. So we need to start with that same number, x. Everything that happens in the middle is totally up to you. Have fun with it. come up with some fun things that you're going to get these people to do while they go through your number trick. We could either work forwards or backwards in this one. It really doesn't matter. Let's try working forwards this time since we did backwards last time. Maybe with that number, what you're going to get people to do is to multiply it by 2. So then that's going to turn into 2x. Maybe then we'll get them to add 10. Next, maybe we're going to get them to divide by 2. So then that's going to become x plus 5. If you want to just jump right to the end here, you could just get them to subtract 5, or you can do anything in between. You can have as many steps as you want. Let's just make this easy. Let's just go right from here to here, and we'll tell people to subtract 5. Let's make sure that this works. Let's start with any number. Let's go with 20. First, we're going to times by 2. We get 40. Next, we would add 10. We get 50. Next, we'll divide by 2 for 25. And then we're going to subtract 5, and I get back to 20. Perfect. That's the number that I started with. You can do this with any number. Let's try a different type. Number trick number 3. It's going to end with the same number every single time. I think these are the hardest number tricks to come up with, but I also think that maybe these are the most amazing, I guess, or the most shocking when people do this on Facebook. You know, people will do this and be like, how do they do it? Oh my goodness. Well, here you go, guys. This is how you do it. What we need to start with is what number do you want them to end with? So you can really pick any number you want. I'm going to just choose 8. So this is what I want people to always end with. Again, what I need to start with is x, meaning that I'm going to choose any number and that number is going to turn into 8. What happens in between there, again, totally up to you guys. You get to kind of have fun with it again. Have some fun, play around, and get people to do a bunch of things, and then it's going to turn their number into 8. What I'm going to do is let's start with multiplication. I'm going to get people to multiply by 4. So x times 4, we turn this into 4x. Let's make them add 1. Okay, so then that's going to turn into 4x plus 1. Let's go with, let's do some more multiplication. Let's go times by 2. So that's going to turn it into 8x plus 2. Afterwards, let's get rid of that 2. We'll get them to subtract 2. And that's going to turn it into 8x. Last thing that we got to do to go from 8x to 8, I need to divide by x. This is probably the hardest part right here, is that you somehow need to get rid of the x eventually. Like, yes, you can have some fun and definitely have some fun with this, but eventually at some point you have to turn your variable into a number. This division by x is going to have to really be in there somewhere, or you're going to have to subtract by x. Like, something's going to have to happen that you actually get rid of your variable and it results in a number. What we want to do is actually check that this works. So let's start with a number like 1. All right, if I start with 1, my first step is that I need to multiply by 4. So that I'll get 4. Then I need to add 1, I'll get 5. Times by 2, I get 10. Subtract 2, I get 8. And then this dividing by x means that I'm dividing by the number that I originally started with. So in this case, that was 1. So 8 divided by 1 gives me 8. Perfect, it works. Let's try it with a different number. Let's go with 2. Well, 2 times 4 gives me 8, plus 1 gives me 9, times 2 gives me 18, subtract 2 gives me 16, and then once again, I need to divide by the number that I originally started with. In this case, that's a 2, so 16 divided by 2 gives me 8. Beautiful, it works. Here's one thing that I want us to be very, very, very careful with if we're going to be doing this number trick. What happened if I had started with the number 0? Well, when I times by 4, 0 times 4 is 0. And then I'll add 1, which gives me 1. I'll times by 2, which gives me 2. I'll subtract 2, which now I'm back at 0. But then I have to divide by the number that I originally started with. Well, I can't divide by 0. Math implodes when I try to do this. It's just like, nope, doesn't work. Even if you try putting in your calculator, it literally gives you an error. We cannot do this. Here's where we got to be really, really careful if you're going to do a number trick where it ends with the same number every single time. You kind of have to curate the number that people can pick at the beginning. There's a couple of ways that you could do this. You could tell someone, hey, pick any number, other than 0. This isn't a bad prompt to go with at the beginning, like pick any number other than 0. But then I think that kind of leads to the question of when people try it, they're gonna be like, well, why can't I pick 0? It may kind of give some insight into your number trick. It's not going to be as amazing if people can kind of figure it out. I think another way that you could ask people is pick any number between 1 and 10. So then people are going to be picking a number between 1 and 10, and they're not really thinking about the fact that the number 0 won't work. In fact, if they wanted to figure out that it doesn't work for 0, they'd actually have to test it. I think it gives your number trick a little bit more mystery, but totally up to you of kind of how you prompt that. Personally, this is the one that I'd be picking to choose with, but totally up to you. So that is how you come up with number tricks. I hope this helps you. Have some fun with it. They're supposed to be fun. You will see these pop up on Facebook or Instagram or TikTok or whatever social media will come after this video is made. But yeah, these always show up about every few months, and it's kind of fun to be able to make your own. Have a good day. Bye.